The new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook Wild Game Recipes for the Grill, Smoker, Campfire, and Camp Stove is out on April 24th and is available for pre-order now. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside, from grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Pre-order your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com.
Hey, I'm Tyler.
And I'm KC.
And you're listening to
The Element Lake Show.
What's happening, all my woods people? I am the Whitetail Weatherman, and I'm not giving a report today because it is pitch black outside right now.
Where is the moon?
I don't know, dude. I can barely see anything out there. We're on the phone for 2 hours and 15 minutes chatting with our guest today, Jason Red from Timber Ninja. Cool dude, very experienced when it comes to mobile hunting and the things surrounding the all the different aspects of mobile hunting. All the mods, all the sticks, all the stands, climbing methods, rock climbing. What else, KC? Anything else? This dude knows it all.
All the stick bow stuff. All that stuff, man.
Stands.
Yeah, like, Jason's cool. This is the first time I've talked to him. You talked to him on the phone a few times, but he's a purist without being a snob.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a good place to be because that's a guy
Sure.
you can learn a lot from.
Yep. You can be public lands proud without... it's kind of like
waving the flag.
You can also be a CrossFitter without having to tell everybody.
Can you?
You can do keto without telling everybody.
Yeah. Exactly. What's the thing right now? I guess. Oh, you can be vaccinated and not tell everybody.
That's
right?
true.
That's the thing right now.
That is true. You
Everybody's
don't
like,
have to take a selfie video of you getting a shot in your arm. Which, by the way, I'm not going to watch because I hate watching people get shots. I don't like getting shots myself.
Yeah.
So
or getting shot.
I don't know. No,
Mm-hmm.
I've been shot with a shotgun before. Do you know that?
I think so.
Yeah,
dove hunting, right?
Yeah, dove hunting. Yeah, it's just peppered pretty much.
I feel like there's probably
I got shot from like 45 yards one time.
1 in 10 Texas guys have got a little bit of lead shot in them, I'd imagine. I bet that's the over and under.
Lead shot, baby. Just getting
7
that poison.
1/2.
Getting that poison.
That's right. Well, we are still trying to think about doing some turkey hunting, but man, it's just tough. So I don't know if it's going to happen or not. The turkeys are so far from us. Like, I almost would just rather sit around here and come up with better ways to whitetail hunt, and that's kind of why we're doing this podcast. And last week we released a pretty good one with just Tyler and I that was, how to kill a deer in April, which of course, we're not shooting them now. Don't worry. Don't call the game warden on us. Yeah. But, we are.
They how to not kill a deer or a turkey in April.
That's right. Yeah, we could do that podcast, right?
We could.
But if you're listening and you're a fan of the element, you know what we do. You're probably a little bit of a whitetail nerd, so this is right up your alley, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Jason knows. He's been doing it a long time. He's seen all different things and tamper with stuff and modificated it and done all that good stuff. He's hunted a lot too. He's a pretty hardcore, public land, get way back, hunt the hard country kind of guy, which is exactly opposite of us from about November to the end of the year. Because we start eating cookies.
That's right.
Getting up and down them hills ain't easy, man.
Way back in October, parking lot in late November.
Yeah. So we're over here like, man, we could hunt these 3 spots, but this one, it's like 550 yards from the parking lot, man. Can we do that one instead of the one that's 3/4 of a mile?
Wherever the deer are, man. That's where we will go.
That's pretty much it, man. That's pretty much it. We're not scared, but
yeah.
Anyway, let's get to Jason and talk about some of the things that involve mobile hunting. All right, so now on the podcast, we've got Jason Red with Timber Ninja. You have been training up a ninja tonight with your one of your kids, right?
Yeah, we're just doing nightly jiu-jitsu classes tonight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's got to get the energy and discipline into the kid.
Are you like is this something that you have done as well? Like, do you like to be a ninja as well?
Yeah, I'm a martial artist, I guess would be the correct term. But Timber Ninja. Yeah. No. Ninja on the streets and in the woods.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Are you the Timber Ninja, or are there many Timber Ninjas?
I don't know. I've had a lot of people tell me that they had the name Timber Ninja, but I have it trademarked, so I guess I am.
That's what matters. Legally, you're the Timber Ninja.
Legally, you're smarter than them. That's what everyone's saying. It's like, man, I had my own collector before they knew. I mean, I'm telling you. It's like, okay. Well, you might should have just not been sitting around drinking a beer doing that. You'd actually done something with the name. Well, that's cool, dude. So I didn't know that about you. You and I have talked a few times, and it's usually just a schooling for me on how to kill big bucks, I feel like. But we haven't gone into the ninja world yet too much. And so that kind of makes sense to me now. You know, I mean, obviously Timber Ninja makes sense, but like it really comes full circle since you're a martial artist. What kind of is a black belt the highest belt?
Yeah, in jiu-jitsu. Well, technically there's a crimson belt, which you have to. There's not really in jiu-jitsu anyway. To be a crimson belt, you essentially, it's hard to, I don't know of any Americans that have it. Like, you pretty much have to come from Brazilian lineage.
You have to be a Gracie or
for
whatever.
Like 30. Yeah, you have to be practicing for like 30 years.
Oh, so, I was thinking you had to kill somebody. I thought that's what you were about to say.
No. And I'm so mediocre at everything. So like, I'll never be like at that level. So
hell, I mean, I disagree, man. You sent us some sticks that are pretty slick, man. So. They're definitely not mediocre, which I guess it's not you, but I mean, you're designing them. So, but we'll definitely talk a little bit about that, man. And appreciate you hopping on with us, man. How about a quick overview of, I mean, we're starting to learn why Timber Ninja is kind of what it is, but just talk about like kind of how you came into this and what the backstory is a little bit, lead people into why you're developing stuff that you are.
Well, I mean, essentially, I'm 40 years old. I've been hunting since I was 7 years old. Primarily public land. I would say 90% of my life. Just, I grew up really poor, and we didn't have the opportunity to be in some hunting club or lease or anything. So I've always public land hunted. And then as I got older, I hunted. Well, I grew up in Arkansas, actually, not far from the eastern side of Arkansas and the river bottoms, Mississippi Delta. And then I moved to the mountains of North Carolina in 2009. And, I took a little break from being a super serious hunter. I was doing more like endurance sports and rock climbing and stuff like that. And then I always hunted, but just wasn't as serious as I was, up until my early 20s. I took a little break, and then I moved to the mountains and got really serious again. And, hunting bigger tracts of mountain public, and we and I was using a lot of the gear that was on the market at the time, packing in everything from starting out younger. I mean, I started with everything from tree spurs to homemade climbers to the Baker stand to lock on stands with sticks, like Lone Wolf stuff, and just got into playing with gear and tweaking it and hunting in, the deep mountains. You try to reduce your weight, just, packability wise, if you hunt in the mountains, a lot of times you got to pack your deer out. So if you come in with a stand, you want to get as much as you can in, least number of trips. And so I started playing with different gear and, different types of materials, and nobody had been doing anything with carbon fibers. And I had some experience with carbon fiber through, racing bicycles and, climbing and things like that, like ice climbing that uses carbon fiber, ice axes, and, used trucking poles that were carbon fiber. And I was just wondering why nobody's made sticks and things like that out of carbon fiber. So I started making prototype stuff for myself just to make my kit more efficient and lighter weight and less noise and things like that. And then, fast forward until last year, I started, Timber Ninja Outdoors. We're a mobile hunting products company, and we make stuff primarily with carbon fiber, but we do offer aluminum versions just to have a little bit more budget friendly product offering. But it's kind of how I got into the space that I'm in.
Yeah, that's cool, dude. So, did you hunt? You said you moved to the mountains of North Carolina. Did you hunt deer out there, or was that just kind of where you resided for a few years?
I got relocated out here for work, and I came out and I casually hunted when I first got here. I mean, I had a newborn when we got here, and I was just hunting for meat. I did a lot of trophy hunting in my teenage years through high school and in my early 20s, and then kind of, like I said, when I got into the endurance stuff, I just meat hunted, and I got up here and started hunting the mountains and kind of fell in love with it. We don't have a really high deer density up here, so it took me a few years of exploring these backcountry spots to start finding mature buck sign and mature bucks, and really got overwhelmed with how much I love doing that, and
cool.
And that led me into doing it in other places in the Appalachians and on the East Coast as well.
Yeah. What about brook trout, man? Have you spent much time catching them?
Yeah, I would be like like a white belt at trout fishing.
Okay, I was hoping you were going there. I like it, dude. I like it.
I do some, but my business partner Jordan, he's a part of Timber Ninja as well. He's definitely a high ranking fly fisherman.
Not quite crimson though, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's not crimson, but he's pretty high up there. I mean, he grew up here, so we have very sought after trout waters up here.
Yeah.
But the time for the really good fish, like the big browns that people chase, is like turkey season and October, which really messes with my
you ain't lying.
Conflict of interest,
dude. That's like, I mean, I've always wanted to catch the browns running like in the Red River and out in New Mexico and stuff. That's something I wanted to do so bad. And then the same thing, like on the coast, the reds run, in October, and it's like, man, I will do it one day, but I got a few deer to shoot first. You know what I mean? Like so I'm just not there yet. But I know I've been over there to actually the Smoky Mountain National Park on the North Carolina side before, and it was just awesome, dude. It was one of the first trips that I ever made where like, we were gonna pack stuff in and camp. It may have been the first one I ever did, and it was just like I think I might have still been in college, and my best friend and my wife and I, who we were all in college or whatever, I guess. We took off and went to the World Aquarium in Atlanta, which is awesome, by the way. If somebody's listening and hadn't heard that yet, definitely highly recommend that. And then we went up to North Carolina, got into the Smoky Mountain National Park, and backpacked in with these gigantic like JanSport backpacks, And we've since streamlined things. It's kind of the same story as you have with Timber Ninja. It's like, and this is one thing that a lot of people, I think, should understand when it comes to just hunting, whether it's public land or whether it's like mobile style hunting or like even just, going into the backcountry and spending time fishing or something like that. Like sometimes, I mean, let's put a little caveat here that like you don't want to put yourself in a bad situation where you might die or something. But like sometimes you gotta go out and do something a few times to learn what you need and where you can, what would make your experience better. You know what I mean? So like a lot of people I feel like are kind of scared to the point where they like will just be inactive and not go do anything because they don't feel like they're ever prepared for it. And sometimes you just gotta kind of go out there and get in the woods and have a rainstorm hit you and come back soaked a day later to the truck, and then you go, okay, I see I need an actual waterproof tent, not just one that you bought at Walmart, whatever. So,
oh man. Yeah. I mean, well, that's, how I started doing backpacking stuff is like, I look at what I started with when I'm not even talking hunting because I've done a lot of like backcountry, through hikes and stuff like that it's like what you start with and what you end up with after experience is like daylight and dark. Like I used to pack canned chili and things like that, you know, like with a crappy pack that didn't fit me, and just the things you learn, but over time, what makes you more efficient and also to be able to stay out there longer, you know, it just changes, but it has to come from experience, and you have to do what you said, and you have to pretty much just go, you have to have that desire to want to do it and fail before you can really learn to have a better experience down the road. And it just takes time. Like nobody can, you know, it's the old saying, like, you know, you can't give a man a fish. You really got to teach him to fish. And I'm sure you guys get that a lot too, you know, having the following you do about people, you know, everybody wants to kill a big buck, but you know, the easiest way to kill a big buck, well, there's no easy way.
There is in Texas, actually.
Well, well, technically, yes. Yeah. If you want to go guided. Yeah. But I say unguided.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, it's just time. You got to put the time in, and you got to be willing to fail. I mean, it's like a martial art, technically.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I mean, it's 100%, man. You got, you know, and I think there's a little bit of maybe stubbornness that helps a person. Like if a person has that quality, and I say that, you know, like, I guess it's not necessarily a good quality, but it's a quality that you might have, or an attribute of stubbornness that tends to make somebody like for me, you know, like I can play guitar pretty decent, you know, and I can hunt and fish pretty decent, I feel like. And that's just because I'm hard-headed enough to have stayed with it through all the failures. You know what I mean? Like when I started playing guitar, my fingers hurt so bad, but I was just hard-headed enough to keep going and keep playing. And even though I was terrible and had a terrible guitar, it was hard to play, like just kept going. And I think that's like, you know, KC and I probably now would call it perseverance. But I mean, when I was in high school, it was just me being hard-headed and stubborn or whatever, you know, and learning for different reasons. You get more wise and you learn how to manage that stubbornness a little bit, I think, you know, and not be a punk to other people, you know, when it comes to that part of, you know, your life and your arguments and stuff like that. But, yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it, is just going after something that you think is kind of cool and just going, man, I'm going to find out what this is about, even if I fail, because I mean, let's be honest. Like, what have you ever tried that you were successful at right off the bat? You know, consistently. You know, I don't think that most of us would say nothing. Probably. You know. Yeah,
there's really nothing there. I mean, it's the law of 10,000. You know, like you got to do something 10,000 times technically to become to get to the level of somewhat of a mastery of it. It's like you with a guitar. Like you played a guitar, but you didn't. You know, like but even when you have a guitar. You know, a $3,000 guitar or a $100 guitar, it really doesn't make a difference. Like you would play either one of those very well, right? You know, because you've put the time in to learn the skill.
Yeah. But you can play
everything applies to that.
But you can play that a lot of times. You can play that $3,000 guitar better than you would play a $100 guitar, which kind of like, to me, this kind of bridges us into what we're talking about here with Timber Ninja. You know what I mean? Like we've got. And I want you to kind of take off right here with like, okay, let's just start with climbing methods. And you mentioned like tree spikes. I guess that's what they're called. Like, you know, I guess those are spikes on your feet or whatever. But like, talk about like your evolution of climbing methods and like where you started, some of the things that you've tried, things that were cumbersome or didn't work right, or you know, for integrity purposes you didn't like, or whatever it might be. And then where you've ended up and what you've created, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and in full disclosure in that, you know, certain people are going to find things that work better for them than it does for others. So, like, you know, sometimes my experience may not be someone else's experience, but, you know, ultimately, you know, what helps us all is confidence, and we have confidence in our system, we're going to be successful. So, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like when I started hunting when I was young, my mother had a boyfriend that was a lineman, and he gave me a set of tree gaffs, you know, or tree spikes, whatever you want to call them, you know, for climbing poles. He did not give me the whole lineman belt rig and stuff. So I pretty much like monkey grip the back of the tree and like, you know, spike my way up the tree. And then, you know, at that time we were just, we would either, you know, on public land, we would put in like preset, like, wedges with plywood in between the Ys of trees and just stand up there in between a Y, like on this platform to bow hunt or gun hunt. We would build little stands up there, you know, like the idea of like lock-on stands really wasn't a thing. Climbing stands, in the 80s were starting to come out. And then, not long after that, they did have like different types of lock-on stands, like the lock-on limit, and different ones like that essentially just, they hung from a chain, no bottom strap. And, we were getting up there 25, 30 feet and without safety harnesses back then, because there wasn't a safety harness. The first safety harness that came out was essentially like a seatbelt webbing that was in a loop that went around up under your arms and then attached to the tree in the same way. So like, I don't know anybody personally took a fall on that, but I would definitely not want to fall like that, especially now. Like, I have for 15 years, I've been a safety consultant for PPE, I'm a fall protection specialist, and I see what an actual fall does to, the type of force it generates. And you think about falling, with some of that kind of crap, what it would do to you.
Yeah, to call it a safety harness is probably a misnomer.
It's like it keeps you alive, but your arm's going to be ripped way out of socket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's good. Like you're gonna get like a real quick experience for like the what was it they called when you remember the wrestling move? They put the hands behind your shoulders.
Yes, it's not suplex. Is that
not the suplex? No. And it bends your arms back. I don't know. I can't remember the name. And that sucks.
Sorry, that's the only one I know.
I was like a wrestling, WWE follower for some years.
Who was your dude?
Oh my God. Sting mainly.
Sting. All right,
man. Okay.
I was expecting Goldberg or something.
I haven't heard that in a while.
Being from Arkansas,
I was waiting for my time. Well, Sid Vicious was from my hometown, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he went to school with my dad.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we could spend another 2 hours talking about Memphis wrestling. But my evolution, with the tree gas, the problem is, and there's a lot of people using them now, and some people are very successful with them. I mean, there's things about them that work. And, and if it's okay with you, I'm just going to kind of like talk about these and kind of discuss each one with like what I felt like a pro and a con.
Yeah. Sounds great, dude.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So with the gas, like unless you do that, it takes a lot of practice, because you have to leverage, the correct angle in the tree. You have to understand, you making sure you get your bite. So like, it is very sketchy starting out unless you've been doing it, unless you're a lineman, right? You don't understand how to put that body position. And, like I said, I wasn't using a lineman's belt, but now with lineman's belts, it makes it a little bit easier. But the issue that I experienced back then, and like even when I look at it now, is you got to pack these things, you put them on at the tree, and then they're a little cumbersome getting up and down, unless you've really had a lot of experience with them. And you get up to the tree, and say you're using a saddle platform, or say you carry up a lock-on stand with you. You get up there, and then you got to take these things off because you have spikes sticking out, right? And you guys know how it is. Like, especially if you're not a very fit person and very flexible, bending down to take off tree gas in the stand is kind of cumbersome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like especially with today's saddle platforms, they're smaller, and it's just a little bit more complicated. Well, then you decide, if you're not like using a rope system to rappel off, you got to down climb, right? And if you've been standing and hunting all day, like say you're doing an all day sit and it's cold, like your legs, there's not tons of blood flow going to them. So you know how it is. Like you've set on an all day sit and you got to walk down your tree at night. Like your legs don't feel as strong as they did, when you walk to the stand and they were warmed up,
Yeah.
So, that's a problem. If you're a public land hunter, you really have to check the regulations to make sure that, the tree gaffs are legal in your state. So that's an issue. Mm-hmm. But, the positives of them, they're lightweight, right? I mean, they're essentially like they make them now that are carbon. So, you're probably, I haven't checked the weight, but you're probably around a pound or so, which would essentially be like one of our sticks. You only have to carry that with you, and they're pretty small, so you can put them in a backpack and things like that. But, that's the pros and cons of those. And then, and then I started hunting with the climbing stand for a while, because I started doing everything from having my grandfather's buddy that was a welder weld up some dangerous contraption that made a ridiculous amount of noise and made out of angle iron and stuff. I mean, you guys seen them, wing nuts and hardware store just bolts and no teeth or anything on them.
You find those left in the woods, it's because guys are like, it ain't worth it, you know?
Almost died.
Yeah, I came close to dying. They weighed, 40 pounds. But climbing stands evolved, like so much through their time. And there's a lot of, they're still, in my opinion, one of the most comfortable things to hunt out of, right? Like, especially if we're in the tree lounge era. Do you remember seeing those things?
Oh, I hunted out of one of those. If you're a rifle hunter, man, that's a way to go.
Yeah. But think about like if you have a semi fear of heights, like getting up there and lounging back in that thing was. I never owned one. My grandfather's friend had one, and I got up in it. But so things got in that world got really comfortable, and they're very useful. You essentially, if you take like a hand climber. Well, let me back up. Like the old school, like if you had you remember the Baker stand?
No, I don't know what that is.
No.
So a Baker stand was a super lightweight climbing stand that didn't have a top. You pretty much hugged the tree, and then pulled your legs up. And then there's the introduction of the hand climber, whereas it wasn't a sit down, stand up type climbing system. It was a hand climber. So you essentially you grab the side post with your hands and you rest your forearms on the seat pad to climb up and down. And the ones that Lone Wolf makes one still this day, I believe, and XLP makes one, which they're way more advanced than that. But, those got to be pretty lightweight. Some of those systems were, off the top of my head, they were sub 10 pounds, right? So, and they fold up really compact. So it really was made hunting, semi-compact with a climbing stand, whereas some of these sit down, stand up models, they're pretty bulky. You take like a Summit, which is super comfortable, but it's essentially like a wedge shape. And it's like, what do you do with your backpack? Like I went through that stage of hunting public land where, I take all my gear and put my climbing stand on and stuff a backpack, with all my layers and hike 3 or 4 miles and my bow's banging up against it, because it was big and bulky and you getting caught in brush and stuff like that. But they are efficient and, as far as like they're easy to get up a tree, like, fairly safe. It takes a little time to learn climbing what they climbing stand. You got to make sure you get your angles right at the bottom. You guys have been there, I'm sure. Like, have your platform angled up in the air so that way it levels out by the
as
time
the
you get to the top of the tree.
narrows. Yeah.
So there's pluses there, but that was one of the negatives, right? Like, unless you've been doing it a while and can look at the tree, like sometimes you're going to be sitting on a angled platform or seat system. Usually just a platform because you can adjust your seat system once you're up there because you still had the platform to stand on. But another negative, that I ran into with my climbing stands was you had to have a pretty slick tree with no cover, right? And which is, if you hunt a lot of places, like it's like with a lot of systems out there, you end up having to hunt for the tree more than actually the trail that is set up. It was more a problem finding the correct tree to hunt out of. But it works really good in pine country and things like that, where you can get 30 feet up a pine tree before you hit a limb.
Yeah.
So the climbing stand, and and we were talking about carbon fiber. Old Man actually came out with a carbon fiber climbing stand back in the 90s or early 2000s.
Wow!
So they were actually the first people to have a carbon fiber, what I call at height whitetail product. Which their stands were pretty awesome too. Like I failed to mention them, but they were pretty efficient for even their traditional models.
Yeah.
But so those systems, they work well, and there's a lot of guys that still use climbing stands and probably will use a climbing stand until the day they die. But
there's
some
a lot
of the issues.
We come across a lot of people that still are hunting out of climbing stands.
Where we live, 1 out of every 100 trees works for that too.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy that people still do.
Yeah, and like they're so much safer than they were, back in the early days. With these rubber straps, they bite so well and adjustments. Like there's a place for them, and I'm sure you're going to see some modern advancement in that space. I'm not saying that's something we're going to do, but like I guarantee you, there's so many people chasing dollars out there that you'll see some more advancements in the climbing stands.
I was hunting actually in Arkansas one time out of a climber, and I was up pretty high in a pine tree, like you mentioned, and I had a 243, and it was like really cold that morning, and one of those mornings where it's like real still, it's frosty, and it took me a while, like you said, to find the tree that I was going to get in. So I got up there kind of right after daylight, and I start pulling my 243 up on my pull rope, and I get it almost to the top, and that rope just snaps.
Oh, no.
And my gun went barrel down into the mud like a foot deep, dude. It stuck barrel down in the mud. And I said, okay, I'm done hunting. It was terrible, man. Terrible. Man.
Well, there's been guys that have died that way.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Folks not practicing proper gun safety and having a loaded gun, pulling up a tree and drop it, or, snag a branch, pull the trigger, and shoot themselves. Like it's the real deal.
Yeah, sad deal, man. But that doesn't necessarily have to do with climbing stand too much. But just a funny story.
I haven't heard that one either. That was a good story.
Yeah. So what else? What else we looking at out there?
Well, I mean, the most common, is in today's world for mobile hunting is the sticks and a lock-on stand. I mean, saddle hunting, that's taken off, but it's still it's still not the market share that a lock-on stand and sticks is. But it's growing rapidly, and it's here to stay, regardless of what anybody wants to think. Like, there's a lot of advantages of it, but the most common would be the sticks and a lock-on stand, which, if you look back in history, there's a lot of people have done a lot of different things, but really, Lone Wolf with Andre DeQuisto really set the bar pretty well when he introduced some of the products that he did. He did a phenomenal job of making a cool, packable mobile hunting system, and really start that trend. So, and that method is essentially, you have multiple sticks you attach to a tree with different types of attachment methods, and you get up to your hunting height, and then you either have carried up your stand or you pull it up with a rope and you set your lock-on stand. And, we can start with the sticks. I mean, the sticks, you have so many variations. I mean, predominantly 90% of them are made out of aluminum. I don't know of any pure steel ones, right? I mean, it's mostly all aluminum products, and people have single step or double steps. They attach them with, started primarily everything was attached with a cam buckle, but a lot of people started using, like myself, like a rope to get away from the cam buckle. And now there's people making daisy chains out of Amsteel. They're using daisy chains made out of nylon webbing and things like that to attach the stick. Since
we're there for a second, can you explain what that is? There's some terms like this that we'll all kind of use and kind of know what they mean, but there's all sorts that listen and are learning, from a guy like you. So can you explain what Amsteel and daisy chain and stuff like that is?
Yeah. So, everybody's, I guess, familiar with what a cam buckle is. It's just a nylon strap with a camming metal device that you put a loop around. You have two loops on it. One goes on a Versa button, which is the button on the stick. You wrap around the tree, put the other loop on, and you pull the cam buckle strap down. It's, like a cargo control. Well, then you have what a lot of people call the rope mod, which is essentially used anywhere from a 6 to 8 millimeter static rope, and you have an eye in one end that attaches the Versa button. You come around the tree, and then you use whatever type of hitch type to attach the rope to the button on that other side. I use a knot called a cow hitch, which is there's a few different names in it, but it's essentially two half hitches that are ran the same same way or opposite way to where your tails go down, and essentially, it pulls itself tight on those hitches to where that rope doesn't slip. And then you have people that use these what they call daisy chains, and some people use Amsteel. Amsteel became a very common product in the mobile hunting whitetail space. Mainly, I mean, saddle hunters, I would say, probably really started that, and they started using this type of. It's essentially a braided. Braided polyethylene based fiber rope. So it's like Dyneema, Spectra. It's a polyethylene based rope that's really high. It's high strength and high abrasion resistance. So essentially, abrasion is like wear and tear. It takes a while to break it down, and they take and they're able to weave in, because since it's a braided rope, you can take like what they call a fid. It's essentially like a needle, and you can braid it, take your eye and make an eye and braid your tail back through, and even sheath it, hide your tail back into the actual braided rope itself. But you can make daisy chains, which are little loops spaced out at various distances to make loops to where you could attach those to the Versa button depending on how large the tree is. So essentially, most of us use around a 7-foot length of attachment method, regardless of what it is. Well, that daisy chain would have them spaced periodically in that 7 foot. So if the tree's you just get as tight as you can. The problem that you run into with those is that they're never going to be perfect. Well, sometimes they could be perfect, but a lot of times, they won't be, and you may be off. You may be off half a length, so you have a little bit more slack. And so, and I talk about this in one of our videos on YouTube about how to properly climb a tree, is that when people, one of the common safety hazards and accidents that happen with climbing sticks is kick out, right? I mean, I'm sure anybody that's hunted with a climbing stick has had at some point in their career, if they've done it enough, they've had a stick kick out. And a lot of times what causes that is that the angle of how you attach your rope is too high. It's not in level with the Versa button. And there's also people that have modded their sticks improperly, or maybe even manufactured them improperly, where the Versa button is not set up in the right the right length from the top of the stick to have it balanced to where it really is going to dig equally. So it may be weighted less on the bottoms, which can cause kick out. Essentially, like, I don't care about, it's not really a trade secret. What I've found to be the best Versa button placement is about a third, the top third of the stick. So a third down tends to be the most effective that I've found. So anyway, what you really want to have is when you wrap your attachment method around the tree, you want it to be as in line with that Versa button as possible. Like if your rope is angled up to a degree where, let's say it's in line, like it's biting around the back of the tree around where your step or even higher is, that's going to put less bite on the bottom of the stick and can cause kick out. So if you're a little long in your daisy chain, it's going to cause the angle to be higher, right? So like there's all these, there's instances where that's happened, and where it's caused people to have accidents. I mean, there's certain ways that you can fix that. Like I know guys that use them, and when they have that problem, they'll like take their stick kind of off the tree and, turn it at 90, at an angle essentially, so it takes off some of that pressure and allows them to get that extra, like, let's say ½ inch to get that next daisy to make it tighter. And then they have to turn their stick, either clockwise or counterclockwise for it to, bite down. And it does, when that can work out, it creates a pretty good bite, but that's a lot of work. And potentially, a lot of what I call fiddle factor that I don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
More motion and more sound in the tree at that point in time.
Yeah.
I like fiddle factor, man. I'm going to have to use that. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
It sounds like something Joe Rogan was the host of back in the day.
The fiddle factor. Yeah.
That was before the other one. That was a country music sing off, I think is what it was.
Yeah. But, and then that daisy chain, people also make them out of webbing as well. So, they're just using nylon webbing and sewing daisy chain eyes in it to function the same way that we talked about the Amstel version is. But a lot of guys like them, it's lightweight, and some of them find it's efficient, so they don't have to worry about tying a knot. You don't have to worry about untying a knot, which, in my opinion, the most efficient for me is using the rope method, because no matter the size of the tree, I can always get it as tight as I want on the first go around. I don't have to think about it. And I've tied those types of knots so many times I can do it with one hand, and I advance, and then coming down the tree, I just loosen up the stick and take the pressure off the knot, and I can undo it, and you're ready to roll. In either one of those methods, though, they're a lot more lightweight than a cam buckle. I mean, the weight in the cam buckle is the metal actual camming device, and it also causes an issue of, noise. I mean, noise is a big key in, being a stealthy.
Say it.
Ninja.
Say it, dude.
Ninja.
Just say it.
You gotta be like a ninja, right? You want to be a ninja, you gotta be quiet. So, but with any of those rope type methods or daisy chains made out of Amstel or the webbing, you don't have that metallic issue that can happen. And obviously, if you're using a aluminum or metal stick, metal on metal makes a louder noise, correct? So
yeah. The one thing that the cam buckle does, and this is, the exception, not the rule, but if you're hunting a place, like maybe some of the places in the western part of the U.S., or western Midwest or whatever, where cottonwoods or big oak trees are a thing, sometimes it's hard to get the rope slung all the way around the tree. And whenever you have a cam buckle, you have weight to get that thing around. If say you have a tree that's 4 foot in diameter plus, a big tree like that. That's the one thing where I've seen where it's kind of nice to have that weight. Is I guess you could probably tie a knot in the end of your rope and maybe kind of circumvent that a little bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. In areas where you have these bigger trees, it is a pain in the butt trying to throw I use a 6 millimeter rope, and that little thing's feather light, so you're not wicking it around.
You hope the wind's with you.
Sometimes I've done it. I've run into this issue and end up throwing the stick around the tree as opposed to throwing the rope. You ever do that? It's kind of loud, but if you run in that situation, that stick weighs enough, you can fling it around. So it's I guess a way to get around
hack. Yeah. You never think of it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's not the most ninja of things. That's why it's much more the. I'm my family's from Norway or a part of it, so we're more the berserker Viking type. You know what I mean? So we're not doing as much ninjing. It's a lot more hacking with huge axes. So
heave and hoing.
That's right.
Heave ho.
That's right.
Yeah, but that is a good point about that. I mean, you definitely that is the beauty of the cam buckle is you can use it as a little bit of a weight to get it around, because I tend to not find myself in big trees anymore. Like I can't tell you the last time I hunted a really big tree, but I remember trying to grip around some monstrosities, and that buckle definitely helps.
Yeah, and you're right too. If you, and I'm sure you're kind of getting to this, but as you move towards saddle hunting, you end up in leg-sized trees or less. You know what I mean? You end up in small trees. Because you're not as concerned with finding the perfect stand tree.
Exactly. You can get into what you want. And I mean, I think Greg Godfrey said, when they started tethered or whatever, when he did a video one time, it was basketball size and under is about perfect. And that's what I found myself too, is and I mean, most of the places I hunt small stuff. I mean, because I'm usually really thick bedding and stuff like that, where small stuff lives. But I mean, there's so many ways to skin a cat. And with the sticks, you have people that use single step or double step. I used the single steps for years with no issues. And I mean, full disclosure, I didn't start using a lineman's belt until like a year and a half ago.
Hey,
we might be with you on that. I can't really say whether we used to do that.
It's always on the body nowadays, but there's certain times where like it's safer to not have that thing around a tree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I get you.
I mean, I would just, I'm comfortable with my body and physical capabilities. Like I would climb and when I was like setting another stick or, people are like, the beauty of a lineman's belt is you can go hands free, which is absolutely right. But I was like, I've always been hands free.
Yeah.
I would hook the tree with my leg that wasn't on the stick. And I felt very confident that I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, well, KC's leg's built like 6mm rope.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Sometimes the wind catches it and it goes around.
Gotta have a cam bug on the end of it. But you probably know the move too. Like this probably isn't very, feng shui or whatever these days. But you take a stick like you're talking about, like a double-sided two-stepper, kind of like what your carbon sticks are. Or I guess you have three-steppers. But anyways, you hook your boot heels into the bottom step, and then you put the top step behind your knees, and then you're just locked in there, hands free, And, it works good. Yeah.
Yeah. Or when I had the single step, I just would have one foot on and then take my, let's say I'm my foot on, then I would wrap my left leg around the tree and just heel hook it.
That's how I check cameras all the time. I promise you, that's just the way,
Yeah,
we're whatever it takes.
So we run into what KC and I call YouTube police a lot, where they'll find something in your video that you're not doing the right way or it's dangerous or whatever, Yeah. And but then if you were to go watch like Ridiculousness and some guy's like jumping a ramp off of his roof or something, like nobody says, man, you really need to have that. Ramps bolted into your rooftop or something. Like nobody cares. They're there to watch a guy wreck, So to me, and this is kind of my point, and I'm not trying to promote being reckless at all, but like at some point, like living life, you will die at some point, and you also are always under some kind of threat, right? Like we drive vehicles. Nobody ever says, man, you shouldn't drive a vehicle down that 2-lane road. Like nobody ever says that to me. But the matter of the fact is I'm driving 60 past another guy who's driving 60 or 70, and we're literally passing within 2.5 feet of each other.
And you're both looking at your phones.
It's pretty dangerous. Pretty dangerous.
They are.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, there's calculated risk, right? And you take your risk, and you are your own individual. You are responsible. No government or other person really is responsible for you, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
no. Well, exactly. I mean, you have to understand what your capabilities are to make those calculated risks. Like we talk in rock climbing, it's like, if you're traditional rock climbing and you're placing pieces of gear into cracks and weaknesses in rocks to hold your life, like you're the one that has to make that decision and what your comfort level is and what your experience is doing that. I mean, so and I want everybody to be safe, and that is a problem that we run into, is that there's a lot of people out there that are new to some of these things in the hunting sector, and they essentially the only thing they rely upon is the YouTubers, and some of these YouTube people are getting out there and they've only been doing it for a short period of time themselves, but now they're educating people, and like some of them are not even done something long, in season yet. They just started doing it last week, but now they're making a YouTube video on how to do it, but they really have no background. Right? Yeah. I mean, I hate to come off like being an asshole like that, but that's the truth.
Well,
it's dangerous.
That's what happens when everyone has a platform with YouTube and stuff. You know what I mean? Like everybody has the opportunity, and it's not always about the experience that gets people to the top of the SEO list. Sometimes it's about the most flashiest thumbnail, and all this kind of stuff. So
I'm just telling y'all right now, like, I'm not going to the McDonald's play place and ripping through, like diving headfirst into a slide but my kids will do that all day. We're just you'll see. If I do that at 6'1", you'll see all the skin come off my back. You know what I mean? When I ride, it's like you said, you have to be like you have to know who you are and what your capabilities are. If you're Shaq, you probably shouldn't get in a saddle. You know what I mean? Like, you're just a big human at that point. Like, you probably should just get in a ground blind.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to know, like you said, what your capabilities are. And what you're comfortable with too. Like if you are, like you mentioned, sometimes. I'll tell you this: the first time I ever got into a saddle and started to lean back away from the tree, you want to talk about stomach rolling, man. I was like, oh, this is kind of scary right here. I'm about to lean away from the tree. Like, I've never done that in my life. Always lean towards the tree when I'm up there. So it's a weird feeling.
Well, it's like you have to have trust in your system, and you experience that a lot in rock climbing. Is like, and people. I think a lot of these things would really change when people like started, if hunting took you to heights above 20 feet. Like, there's a lot of people that do some things blind, recklessly, just based off somebody else's opinion. Like buying products that, somebody, you and I just decided we'd take our wife's sewing machine and start sewing up products that we're going to use at height, but like to your point, people get a good name and following because they're consistent on, Facebook groups or forums or whatever. And, nobody's fallen or had a failure yet. So like everybody's using this product, like there's things that I think we all should take in consideration. And then like, when you start leaning away from that tree, like in that saddle for the first time, it's what they call exposure. Cause like your hands are, you're just relying upon this system, and it's very scary for some people. And I mean, and you hear it every day. There's a lot of guys that hunt every day. Been hunting for years that are, scared of heights to begin with.
Me.
Yeah. I mean, it's the greatest fear, essentially heights is, one of the, number one things that people are afraid of. And, vertigo happens to people, you start getting dizzy, you feel like you're about to fall, even though you're completely safe. It's like if you've ever sat on the side of a cliff and just kind of, or even looked out of a window of a building, but yeah, I mean, so there's lots of ways to get up the tree. The sticks, we were talking about, not using a lineman's belt, which you really shouldn't use a lineman's belt, but people have to understand too, like a lineman's belt's not going to completely protect you from falling. Like you're still it's not going to catch you. It'll keep you from falling back, like one of the major, injuries from falling is people that don't use something like that or don't use a safety harness and they fall back first and land on their back or on their head. And, that's some of the most major, that's where fatalities or people that get paralyzed. That's how that happens. That necessarily won't happen with a lineman's belt unless you have a failure in that system, but it's not just going to catch you the way like a girth hitched, like a tether is, it's girth hitching that tree. So when you pull tight, it applies pressure and pretty much stops you. Whereas a lineman's belt, you're going to more than likely take a ride for a little bit and get a face full of bark or sticks.
I've been there.
I scratched my hand up pretty good this year doing that. I had, like what you're saying, I think, I was using like a step ladder type tree step, a single stepper, and that thing flipped out and messed up, and I got lineman's belted up against the tree, and my hand was like in between my gut and the tree,
I think I should have ate them cookies.
Yeah, I know. It was late December too, so I was pushing it on the weight at that point in the season. Yeah.
You got whitetail fit.
That's right, dude. Well, my hand was not appreciative of that for sure. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That's for sure, dude. So, I mean, you've got all these different climbing methods, and you've got the we've talked about how, like, obviously preference, what you're comfortable with, your height is something that we've kind of mentioned with the climbing stands, but like kind of talk about like what I guess what you typically see when somebody's using like a 2-step stick, height wise, like what they're getting to and what you like to get to, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of our that is one of the most common questions we get when people are, because most of the sticks, like your lone wolves and, your hawks and things like that, they were traditionally, 30 plus inch 3-steps, right? And then to get more compact and more lightweight, people started modifying or making the stick shorter. So, you see most people landing, I would say on average in that 17 to 20 inch stick if they're wanting to be a compact mobile hunter, which we offer a 20 and a 24, and but it's so hard to tell somebody how high you can get with a 20 inch stick because it all has to do with how tall you are.
Mm-hmm. And what you're willing to do. Yeah.
What you're willing to do and athletic ability. And in my opinion, I think people put too much emphasis on height rather than thinking about how they're setting up.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I carry 3 to 4 sticks with me, but to be honest with you, I rarely use over 3. And a lot of times I'm at like sometimes at 2 high, 2 sticks high, because I like to hunt in that 10 to 15 foot range because I shoot a stick bow when I bow hunt, and I don't like really steep angles with it. I like to be a little bit lower, but I put more emphasis on what my cover is, and not always getting higher is going to give you better cover. I like to play in the shadows, like keep myself in the shadows, and I like to make sure I have good background cover, and I like to find, if I can, find trees that offer good cover themselves. Personally, I love finding like split maple or something like that. Those are like some of my favorite trees. But
like sitting up like in the crotch of that tree, is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah.
That I love that setup.
Me too, man.
We do that with oaks a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and and like as your foliage comes off the tree, like some people think you have to go higher, but sometimes lower. You need to go lower because it's less common for you to be skyline.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but like I said, that's the most common question I would say we get is like, how high can I get? I mean, I know guys that are 5'8" and can get 20 foot with 3 24-inch sticks, but they're pretty monkeyish and probably doing some things they shouldn't do. But I'm not going to tell a guy that's not very, here's another thing. Going up is a lot easier than coming down most of the time.
Yeah.
Because where you're going up, but when you're going down trying to find that step in the dark, it's a challenge,
man.
And then
not to derail those too far, but the first time my wife ever went tree stand hunting with me, it was with climbing sticks and stuff, and she did okay. We only got up about 10 foot up in the tree, that was kind of like one of those deals where it's like, well, probably won't see much, but whatever, get her out there. Well, the same exact thing you're talking about. It got dark, and she didn't grow up doing that. And she's, my wife's a lot of things, bold and brave. Probably aren't one of those, and that's okay, But like, dude, it took like a good, 10 minutes of hype talk to get her to take that first step down, And you can imagine that, most people are somewhere in between that, guy who'll just slide down, like a cat squirrel, and then, somebody like my wife, like that's a pretty tough thing to do if you're not that experienced. The first step down out of the stand or saddle.
Oh yeah, and I mean, to be quite honest about that, that's where most your accidents happen. It's either that first step out or the first step into a stand. Was the kick out with stands, especially when they didn't have double cam buckle type of attachments on lock-on stands. But you're correct, and people get up and get wigged out. Like, in rock climbing, when people get scared, they call it Elvis leg. Your leg will start jumping. But I want to back up real quick. What is a cat squirrel?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked. That's a gray squirrel. Do you have gray squirrels where you're at?
Yeah, they have gray squirrels.
Yeah.
They're called a cat squirrel.
Yeah, it must be regional, man. Yeah, cat squirrels is a gray squirrel. So we call them fox squirrels and cat squirrels down here. And I think fox squirrel's the common name of a fox squirrel. A red squirrel, fox squirrel, same thing. Yeah, but yeah. I figured you'd have known that growing up in Arkansas, but it must be that that Red River line right there or whatever that kind of.
I think it is. Yeah. I was more like in the Delta. We had mainly we had to go to the hills to hunt. To have gray squirrels, we mainly had red squirrels and black squirrels, which a black squirrel is a variation of a red squirrel.
Yeah, we got a few of those running around over here. We try to,
and up here we have white squirrels. that are a variation of a gray squirrel.
Really?
Saw one. We don't have a ton of them, and they're not albino. They're a white squirrel. Saw one a day turkey hunting, actually.
That's cool.
It's a trophy, man. That's a man cave taxidermy mount right there, man.
Yeah. So a little quick fun facts for people, but yeah, I mean, so like the coming down, it tends to be like kind of the more sketchier part of, a lot of these systems. And I'll let, while we're talking about height and things like that, let's talk about aiders, because that's something that's been, is it kind of a newer addition to the systems of climbing sticks. I would say, let's say probably the last 5 years is, I would be confident in saying that's when you really start seeing people using aider systems that they attach their stick to get more length out of their stick, which, there's different variations of that. Like, people make them out of the M steel, like we talked about earlier. They make them out of webbing, or they make them out of a wire cable, and they attach them at different areas. Like some of them have permanent ones that that stay on your stick all the time. Some have movable ones, like some of the first types of aiders people were using, they were using like a aider system that people use in rock climbing, like a 3 to 5 step type system, and just attaching it to their climbing stick.
That's a good way to end up with your leg hanging up in a tree and your back on the ground. we used one of those somewhere. I guess we made a modified one out of nylon rope and some what is it? A water hose.
Yeah,
and it kind of works.
I knew you were about to say that.
Yeah. But golly, dude, like that just floppy aider is not my favorite. It's not a good thing.
No, and we make a what we call a retractable cable aider that goes on our stick, and so we get a lot of questions from people talking about aiders. And what's interesting is, like, a lot of people there again, like, they haven't used them, but they've seen a lot of people use them and talk about how good they are online. Well, they do have a lot of pluses. Don't get me wrong. Like, you can get more length out of a shorter stick. You can cut your weight down. They're fairly packable, if you're using like one of the removable ones. But there again, we're talking about the coming down factor. It's a lot easier going up with those things than it is coming down. And depending on how they attach to your stick, like if you have 2 points of contact of an aider where it attaches, you don't get as much swing if you're using just like, let's say, a 1-step or maybe even 2-step. But when you start adding steps, and then like you only have one attachment of the aider to the tree, you get a pendulum effect. So you really have to pay attention to how you put your foot in there. And, the best way is like you put it on the upside of the swing of the tree. Like if you have an angled tree that's angling to your right, you want to put your foot if you're in one of those aiders, you want to put it to the left side of the tree, because if not, it's going to swing down. And that's a common issue with the ones that attach to the Versa button, is they just swing like a pendulum. And also, like if your sticks are TMA tested, they don't test the Versa button for a downward pull. Yeah. So, and do I think our product would pass that test? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not going to tell somebody to use that on our product, because we haven't, certified that in a third-party testing lab. So
TMA is Tree Stand Manufacturers Association. Is that right?
Yes, and they have this. They're the only people that have a set level of standards for how hunting, climbing products, tree stands are supposed to be tested.
Yeah,
like
we sent that nylon water hose thing off to them. We hadn't heard back yet, so I don't know.
Dude, I live close enough to one of the labs that they use that it's like 3 hours. So I drive my stuff there and get to go watch it be tested.
That's cool.
It's so cool. Yeah.
You get to watch it be destroyed. Do they stress test it to the max?
Oh yeah. You can have them destroyed for sure. Yeah.
Dude.
Which it's awesome to see. I mean, well, it's kind of sad when,
sure.
You put so much money. Like when I first took my stuff up there, it was like my prototype set that I made, and I had like, $1,000, over $1,000 in them. So I almost started crying when I actually broke them. So it's like, but you get to see like how these things are tested, and it's just not, the old Bubba method of like, hey, well, it's 300 pounds weight rating. Well, let's, me and KC get up on there with a 12-pack of Bud Light, and like that should be like 350. So we're good at 300.
Somebody call Big John, see if he'll hold him,
Yeah. So, that's it. And there's I wonder how many people test some of this stuff, like from aiders and stuff to make sure it works. Cause it's getting sewed. So you got to make sure it's going to hold your weight. But, so the problem, with the aiders that I've ran into, if you have a tree that starts to angle, kick back or angle forward, well, that aider, if it kicks back, that's a better scenario because the aider is going to swing away from the tree. Well, if it kicks forward, the aider will go against the tree when your foot's not in it. So when you're coming down the tree at night, like you're going to be fishing your foot in there to find that damn thing, and that's dangerous. So that's a negative to that. But if you're super, comfortable at heights and you're athletic and you can sit there and like play and find that, like it could be all right. But we all know, like if you've been hunting and it's cold, like your feet don't function properly.
Yeah. Not to mention you've got a snowsuit on. It's like you can't even pull your knee up.
Or muddy boots too,
Yeah, muddy boots. Yeah.
Yeah, muddy boots or icy boots, and so that's why, like, when somebody calls me and they ask me what I use, I never have more than 2 aiders in my system because I only use them on the bottom 2 steps.
That's what we did. I was like, if I don't trust what I've got engineered here with this rope, so I put it on the bottom step, and it basically gave me like maybe a foot and a half or so of advantage, So like, it was I never put it to where it like maxed me out so that if I like did get my foot caught and fell out of it, like that I wouldn't be able, I would just be hanging there until I could get KC to come get me or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I always wanted it just to be, I was just like, I'm just going to get another foot and a half out of it. I'm not going to be too greedy here because this is something that I'm not an engineer by any means, you know what I mean? So that's how I ran mine as well, for sure.
Jason was talking about how, what it's like to be in an all-day sit, and we laughed quietly between you and I because you're not the biggest fan of the all-day sits, and I don't do them a ton either, but there are some times. But I can tell you this, we've been testing out some saddles this spring, and that cruiser saddle that they sent us to try out, man, like I can see myself doing it just a little bit more in that thing. It's just roomy.
It's like putting a beauty rest up in a tree. And
that's it, dude.
Staying there all day.
I love that analogy. I was a mattress salesman for 2 years.
I knew you would love it.
I sold some beauty rests, man. I can sell them to anybody. And I don't know if you should really be doing some beauty rest up in a cruiser saddle, but you might can do like a little bit of like relaxation at least. You know what I mean?
Sure, man.
So if you haven't, go check out Cruiser. What is it? Cruisersaddles.com or Cruiser? It's .shop or something like that, right? Anyways, Google Cruiser, CRUZR, and check out everything they have to offer.
Cruisersaddles.com.
Cruisersaddles.com.
Yeah.
Check out everything they have to offer for saddle hunting and the like.
Yeah, I mean, it's you have, if you do happen to take a fall, you have lesser height, so possibly less injury, but I don't know. I do try to persuade people to not do 4, but I would say 80% of our sticks go out the door with 4 aiders.
Wow. Golly, man.
But it's fine, but for them, if they're comfortable with it, but
I don't know. That's probably, getting to the point where you're trying to not monkey too much, but I'm a monkey guy. And if I had, the 20-inch two-steppers, all 4 with aiders, I feel like I could get 30 feet up in the tree, no problem. You know what I mean?
Dude, I'm not.
What do you need that for?
I'm not a monkey guy, and like I used 3 and 4 steps all year last year, hunted, around 14 or 15 foot most of the time, and killed deer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I killed plenty of deer. I can't recall actually being seen by a target deer that I didn't get a shot at or whatever. Mm-hmm. So.
I think if a person spends more time perfecting how they set up rather than how high they set up, I think they'll be more effective because, there's a lot of learning curve there. But, like we've always heard traditionally that 20, 25 feet is like the optimal height to get out of there. Deer don't look up. That's bull crap. If you're in a pressured area, deer look up. Yeah. wind and thermals, like, yeah, maybe there's a chance you can skate it over their head or something if you're 5 more feet. But, like, really, if you want to perfect your thermals as you go up the tree, you need to be like dropping milkweed like every time you go up. If they're going directly to that deer, you're going to get busted. So I do hunt off. I hunt a slightly off wind because I find that's the most productive for me to get an opportunity. But another thing I think we talked about the other day when you were texting me is people were talking about painting their sticks and versus black or whatever. I mean, personally, I wear black down pants in a tree. Like color, camouflage is a thing. Like for whitetail, I don't find it to be that effective. I maybe wear a camo top or a camo bottom with a solid, and with sticks, like if you put your sticks facing the way the deer is coming from on a trail, like an old doe or mature buck that comes up that trail, they're not necessarily going. They're going to see something different on that tree regardless. It doesn't matter what color it was. They're going to see something. They walk by that trail. They've been walking by it for 5 or 6 years. They're going to see something that's out of the ordinary. More so, camo is not going to hide that. Camo is not going to hide your double steps, off the side of a, bigger than a 6-inch diameter tree, 8-inch diameter tree, whatever. You're not going to be able to hide that. Like technically, you should. I always place my sticks on the shadow side of the tree so they don't get any glare or anything. So, like, color doesn't bother me. And like, honestly, I don't have time to be painting my stuff for stealth stripping.
Yeah, that's kind of how I do. I mean, it's like a time thing as much as anything, But I'm the same way. But like, there's some trees, man. When you're like, this is the tree I got to get in because it's the shot. Like, it's the place that gives me shots. Sometimes I'm like, man. Like for instance, like you're talking about, some trees lean, right? And like setting sticks on the side that it's leaning towards is almost impossible for me to get up. So like I always try to go up, the opposite side to where it's almost like a cat squirrel climbing up a tree. He's going to climb on that side of the tree most of the time, right? When he's just going, he's not scared or whatever. So like, I don't know. I feel like that could put you in a precarious position, but like, I did have a buck in Iowa last year that spotted my black sticks. I was using some muddy, pro sticks or whatever. And, but I mean, he was literally, coming towards my tree from 20 yards and didn't see the sticks until he was like 5 or 6, 7 yards from me. You know what I mean? It
was a situation where like you wish you would have already shot him at that point.
Well, I would have if my camera hadn't fallen.
That's right. Yeah.
I had to readjust my camera, so like I would have killed him,
This year we had a doe like almost lick the bottom black stick, in that one cottonwood tree in Texas.
It's so weird, man. Like that's the thing that throws me off about some of these guys that talk in absolutes about deer, man, because it's like, you hear these guys that say like, this is, I knew this deer was here and I set up on his bed and this and that. And like, I'm sure there's a little bit of truth to that every once in a while, but man, like it's just like, if a deer was so predictable, or if deer in general were so predictable, they wouldn't really be that fun to hunt once you get to a certain level of understanding, you know what I mean? And and just that unpredictability is what makes them fun, man. Like just, going in and feeling good about a spot is different than knowing that you're going to kill.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
A lot different.
So, but that's one of those things. Like with we were just talking about the examples. It's like, man, you always want to try to like pull everything into your advantage as much as possible. But I mean, I'm looking at a spot where last year I pulled my truck up and a giant deer ran to 90 yards while I was sitting in my truck and just looked at me because there was a doe right next to him. Like they just do things that are just unpredictable sometimes, And it's it's cool, man. So
I'll tell you what, back to the camo thing like you were talking about. I understand camo in a lot of senses, but man, like camo on a stick is going to disappear at 15 yards anyways. It's going to be a solid color at that distance. You know what I mean? Like camo is made really more for like, being seen from 200 yards away, or like with turkeys, it's a little bit different, right? But like there's a reason. You know what ASAT camo is, probably, right? Like those flame looking things on ASAT. Those are wider than a stick is, anyways. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, what good's it going to do to camouflage a tree step, or people who have camo bows? Which I'm not going to go over the woods with a bright blue bow or anything. But you get what I'm saying, right? Like once they start looking up, most of it kind of goes gray anyways, because you're kind of backlit to an extent, and two, like
your stick profile is just so small.
So small. You know what I mean? Exactly. And I get like having it not having it earth tone or like something kind of flat or whatever. But like as far as like making sure you get mossy oak bottomlands on there, because that's what's going to match the tree the best. I mean, come on, it's a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of people, and no offense to them, like they want all their gear to match. Like they spend hours trying to match up like Optifade on, with sponge painting on their sticks and platform.
Yeah. It's cool to see some of the stuff they come up with too. There's some artists out there, and there's something to it.
I'm jealous
there's a
of
reason,
their time. Dude.
There's a reason LaDainian Thompson wore the visor, because he looked cool, dude. You know what I mean? Like it's look cool, play cool, kill cool. It's like the part of the hunting thing for some people.
Yeah. What about like because part of being a ninja is being able to sneak up on something. What about the quietness in a setup? Have you seen any mods that you think are worth somebody doing, or what do you do with your sticks and stuff and your gear that keeps them quieter than other I guess brands or other different pieces that you've used in the past?
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't spend a lot of time there's a lot of guys that wrap paracord all over their platforms and steps and all that to quieten them down. I've never really done that, because paracord, if it gets wet and freezes,
slickery.
It's going to be a little bit of a rodeo, I guess, in my opinion. Also, I'm not going to spend my Saturday night wrapping paracord and stuff. So when we came out with our stick, I wanted to keep things quiet. So that's the reason we used a polymer for the step, instead of metal. That's, one of the main reasons, besides weight, we used carbon fibers, because, it doesn't make a metallic noise when you hit it with like a carabiner or something metal. And I haven't posted the video yet, but I actually used a dosimeter the other day, which is how it detects noise ratings and dB levels.
That's a two-ohmer in English, right?
Yeah. And I probably pronounced that wrong.
Texans, man.
But I'm from Arkansas, so I have an excuse. But there was a 20 dB difference between metallic and carbon.
Huh.
Really?
That's cool.
Yeah, I was taking a carabiner, and I wasn't, we make aluminum sticks. I was using our aluminum stick and our carbon stick, and there was a 20 dB difference between the metallic carabiner swinging from the same distance into the carbon versus the aluminum.
Wow.
And so that was another reason that, so that's why we used a polymer in our step, was to reduce that noise, because when you're stacking sticks, the most common cause of noise setting up or taking down at night is the standoff coming in contact with the tube or the step. So we try to reduce two pieces of that. We couldn't, I still don't feel confident in anything but metal biting into a tree as far as longevity goes. So we use that. But, I have wrapped, camo tape around metal pieces in the past to reduce noise, and it does help. And they make what they call it stealth strip tape, which helps with that as well. So you can wrap most of your metallic parts on either your bow or carabiners, since now people are saddle hunting a lot. A lot of people are using carabiners or other types of devices. People spray foam into their metal sticks to kind of, because most people are using some type of hollow tube for their mass section of their climbing stick. So, if you have open ends or if you drill holes and stuff to reduce weight, it turns into an echo chamber, so you try to reduce that type of noise by those types of things.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's mainly what we did. That was the reason we used the carbon fiber. It's just overall it's quieter, you know, hands down. And also, you know, like carbon fiber doesn't get as cold as metal does. So that's another benefit of using.
Dude,
you know.
Now you're speaking the language.
I hunted some cold days last year in Kansas, man. I was like, I'm just sitting there in my truck, like getting ready to get out and walk in, you know, and I'm like dreading setting my sticks. You know, it's like, golly, dude, this is going to hurt my hands so bad, you know, and just it does. And once you get into the stand, you got to just keep your hands in your pockets for as long as you can because you know, they were freezing cold going up and setting up.
Yeah,
so
can't do that with gloves on, man.
Yeah, it's hard.
And some of these, I mean, that's things that like a person trying new gear out for the first time in the spring or summer, you have to think about when it comes time to hunt in the winter is like, how are you going to operate some of these things? Like, I mean, even tying a knot, like, you know, like if your hands are really cold and numb and you can't feel them, like, are you going to be as efficient, you know, with tying and untying things or using things like ropeman's and screwing and unscrewing carabiners and like all this stuff? Like, it works very well under perfect conditions, but when, you know, it gets to be prime time and, you know, it's, you know, negative temperatures out there and you're just frozen as an ice cube and you can't feel your hands. Like, some of these things aren't as sufficient then, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, especially when we start talking about, do we cover everything on climbing sticks?
Sure, you tell us. I don't know. That's hard to say, but it sounds pretty good, I think.
I mean, it feels comprehensive, but like KC said, I'm not the. I mean, if we didn't, dude, we can do this again sometime because this has been fun, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like we kind of hit the gist of it, and like if anybody has some questions, they can, you know, hit either of us up and we'll answer it. But there's also other methods that people are using these days to get up a tree. One is called, you know, they call it, I think some people call it DRT, SRT. You know, Climbing Buddy and I started doing this about 7 years ago. We call it the RAD system. RAD was an acronym for rapid ascent and descent. So essentially we were throwing, you know, like a beanbag over a tree with a small tag line, and then the beanbag would go over. We'd throw it over a limb, and then the beanbag would come down, and we would tie that tag line onto like a static, or we were using old climbing rope, which is dynamic rope, and we had either a carabiner attached to one end, or we had like a overhand on a bite for a loop, and we would pull that loop or carabiner around. And if it was a carabiner, we'd hook it back into the rope. So you essentially create a fixed line to go up the tree. And you climb that using, you know, at that time I was using, and I primarily, you know, until I started hunting out saddle most of the time in my tree stand, I was using my climbing harness as my safety device, you know, fall protection. And so you essentially can go into that fixed line with a device called a gree-gree, which is like a thing we use for climbing for belaying a person that's climbing. It's a capturing device that essentially you can feed line through, but when it has a load on it, it has a camming braking device to stop the rope from back feeding in. You still should be using the tail end of the rope as the brake just as backup, but it's a mechanical device that does catch. And so you attach that to yourself and to the rope, and then you put like a hand ascender up above you, and then you have a carabiner that you attach to the hand ascender, and then it attaches to like a leg loop aider to use your foot, and then you have I use the same carabiner, and I run the tail end of my rope through that comes from my Grieger device that's on my brake hand through that. So essentially, it's, you know, you have to Google this, or YouTube it.
You will.
You move the hand ascender up the rope, and you stand up in your leg loop or aider, or whatever you want to call it. And as you're doing that, you pull the slack out of the rope that's attached to your Grieger device, because that Grieger is what's holding you. And then it's really cumbersome if you haven't done it enough. And fortunately, I'd done it enough climbing that I was fairly good at it. and efficient, but you just work this system back and forth until you get to the, where you want to place your stand or your tree saddle platform. And the beauty of that type of method is you're always protected. Like there's no, you can essentially let go of the brake arm and that device has you held, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're always safe. And then you're all hands free. You can get your, lock on stand attached or your saddle platform. And then you transition in that. And then that rope and that device is your fall protection as well. So you never have to come out of the system. And then at the end of the night, when you're ready to come out, you just swing off onto that rope, and that device also has a little brake on it, and you can start releasing it a little bit, and you rappel down on that fixed line. So very safe if you know how to use those types of things. But it's a little cumbersome getting started, right?
I saw a guy on YouTube explaining that before, and then he looked like he was gaining about 4 inches every time he did the motion, and I was like, no, that ain't for me. He looked pretty cumbersome, like it might not be something he was really experienced with either. How do you get that rope down?
So what I always did, what I found to be there's 2 ways you can do it. You can attach, like let's say you're using a carabiner as your on the end of your rope, and you're biting that carabiner, you're clipping that carabiner back into the main line and creating a girth hitch on that limb. You can tie in that feeder line again and drop it to the ground. So when you get down, after you rappel down, you can pull that tag line to pull that section of the rope back down to you, and you pull it out of the carabiner or the eye of the rope. That's really tough because sometimes that sucker bites and you're up there jerking, and that's the hardest way to do it, in my opinion. Yeah. What I always did was I carried double the length of what I expected to climb. So if I was climbing 20 feet, I would carry 40 feet of rope. And when I got up there, I would essentially drop both tails. I would take the carabiner off or the unthread it from the eye of the rope if I used it in that method, and would drop both tails down. And I would use a device that you rappel on called an ATC, or you can use a figure 8 device, and I would rappel that way. That way all I have to do is pull the rope over the tree and wouldn't have to worry about trying to jerk the eye down from the bottom. A lot of moving parts with that system, and you have to be very comfortable with that system to be safe. And you got to make sure that you're using the right spec of rope and for the devices you're using and all this stuff. So there's a learning curve, or it could be very dangerous.
It sounds like the latter to me, but that's because I'm not a rock climbing guy. It also sounds like it's going to be real hard to sell sticks if you're teaching people how to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's definitely it's kind of like what we were talking about with the climber. You're having to hunt trees that have a limb. Yeah. To be able to throw that over. And also there could be a situation where that limb's deader than you thought it was.
Everything drops solid until it's not.
Exactly. And I used that a lot. I used to, and I still do some. I'll set fixed lines in places. That way I come back, especially for rut funnels and stuff. Yeah. I do that a lot.
I thought about that for my own personal property, because last year, Tyler and I both have some 20+ acre places that we have out on loan from the bank, of course, but they let us hunt it, So we go out and when we end up doing hanging hunts on our own property, because they don't have a ton of those old metal stands laying around, and it's like, man, this is kind of a lot of work for something that's supposed to be a little bit easier. And I've just been wondering, could I put a big old eye bolt or a pulley up in a tree and just have a line that I leave there, and walk up with my saddle and just kind of
do the treehouse thing. You got a bucket and you just pull yourself up in the bucket.
Dude. That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
I guess you're talking about a more scientific version of that, right?
Yeah, that's I do that a lot still. I have spots that I still use that method on.
It's cool.
If I have places I know I'm going back to, But if you're using it the traditional way, like I was talking about before, people talk about there's less bulk and what have you. But technically, when you start putting 40 foot of rope in your backpack, it gets pretty bulky.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And then at the end of the night, you have to coil that rope and do all these things. And like there again, there's some pluses and minuses to it. But ultimately, if you know what you're doing and you're using the proper equipment, you're training that equipment, it is very safe. But and then now recently, people have gotten into this method called the one sticking method.
Yeah.
Which on paper it seems really cool. I mean, there's people that are jumping on the bandwagon and getting products to market to accommodate that. These one sticking sticks that operate as a platform and a climbing stick. So. But the problem with that is, like, in my opinion, if you've watched any videos of this, is like the whole working up and down. So that they're essentially getting their stick as high as they can on the first go, using multiple, like a multi-step aider. And then they have a fixed line that they work up the tree and attach themselves into that. And they kind of essentially do that same method we talked about earlier, but they're not really having to what we call jug the rope using the hand ascender. They're just using the ascender. The step is kind of doing the climbing for you, and you just take the slack out of the rope as you go up, and then you move your girth hitched rope up the tree higher. But then you got to kind of rappel down a little bit to get your stick below your feet, And if you ever watch these videos, there's a lot of movement going on in that system.
Yeah.
But and people say it's lightweight. And technically, to some things it is, but a lot of these single sticks that people are using, they're like 4.5 pounds by themselves. So like, and none of them are built very compact. They're all bulky looking. I mean, I'm not hating on it, but like what I want in my system is stuff to be fairly compact when it's attached to my pack, so it's not like dangling around or getting caught in brush and stuff. And I haven't seen a very compact one stick step set up yet. But
one of our other dudes, Hunter, has 4.5 pound sticks that he carries 4 of. I think they're giants,
the heavy old iron things that aren't even made to be mobile.
They're built for the guy who has a tree or a deer lease,
it's all relative, man. If you're used to that, you're going to pick up some of the, Timber Ninja aluminum sticks and be like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer, and it's like, which they're nice, but it's like, what's the difference in the weight from the carbon to the aluminum? Do you know off the top of your head?
So our 20-inch is 1.2 pounds on carbon. It's 1.6 on aluminum.
Yeah.
Which, and most people that are making aluminum sticks in that size range are, around that to 2 pounds is like, what they call the ultralight, or not ultralight, but lightweight climbing sticks. But then, you get up into like some other stuff and you're 2.5 pounds, or more. But, I think some people have gotten into it these days, and they like exploring the methods of the stuff, and it's fun to them. And, if that's what brings people joy, that's awesome. That's what gets your rocks off, to have a good time in the woods. I tend to spend more time learning how to be effective killing more.
Me too.
Learning the animal, and I still use and like the saddle hunting. People talk about lock-ons versus saddles. Lock-ons are still predominantly the most used product, but the saddles and saddle platforms have some advantages, but they also have disadvantages too. I do feel like, if you're using the proper gear, a saddle is very safe, because you don't have a lot of rope in the system to take a fall, you know? You just got to make sure that you're using a saddle that's been tested for a fall, if you're going to have that, and make sure you're using the right equipment. I mean, you have, in this era of people want to get lightweight, they're starting to use ropes in mechanical devices that the mechanical device is not rated for the rope size they want to use because they want a more packable rope. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there that I think shouldn't be messed with. You should stay in spec on your stuff. And, these companies that make most of these types of mechanical devices are climbing type companies. And, they're not, you really don't want a fudge factor there. It's
right.
like, well, wait.
It's different than a fiddle factor, though.
It's a little different there. But he's like, he says 8, but I think 7 works good for me today.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a millimeter. What's the difference? That's metric anyway. So don't do that.
How many times has that been said? Man? Just an inch. Just an inch.
Yeah, it's just an inch. Yeah, he's just trying to sell me a bigger rope.
That's it.
But man, it's there's a lot more people experimenting these days, and I think there's definitely some. You may see more accidents in the future with all the experimenting going on.
That's a good point, man. So,
there's guys experimenting on the BMX courses and stuff.
There's guys experimenting with all kinds of stuff, smoking it and all kinds of stuff too. So people are prone to do that kind of thing. Yeah. But I think what works for a lot of guys is you find your system and you learn it well and you do it. And once you learn how to kill animals doing that, not that you shouldn't experiment and try to it's always good to have an open mind, but at the same time, sometimes it's good to just find what works and stick with it. So. For me, I think I'm always probably going to be the guy who carries a couple sticks, 2 or 3 in the woods. And I did, swap over to saddle hunting this past year. But, I mean...
But as you hunt, you realize the things that could help you. You know what I mean? Without even having to experience that product, you can know that thing is like what you
And we
need.
talk about this a lot, too. It's like there's some guys who have really good jobs that pay good money. And what they can do is... try to fiddle with gear, fiddle factor for, 11 months and 2 weeks of the year, and they have the 2 weeks vacation that they can take and go hunt. And there's other guys who are bums, like maybe 2 people in this truck right now that, we don't have as much fiddle factor about us because we're going to go hunt quite a bit, and we just need to find something that works and go do it, And it's kind of like what you were saying, Jason, like, whatever brings you joy and whatever you feel like works for you, it's just what you need to do. It's not that there's any one right or wrong way, or what's right for you might be wrong for me.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't guarantee, what you hit the nail on the head. Like what works for me is not going to work for you. Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about trade. That's the thing. Like, and there's so many people that they think that, they ask these opinions, and so many people harp in, and a lot of people harping in sometimes don't even have experience with what they're doing. They've only been doing it for the last week or two, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. But, I'm more about going out and hunting. Like, for me, like, I'm trying to improve my craft where I can start killing big deer off the ground. Like, to me, that's, the most fair chased and getting personal and, like, let's call it, makes you the ninja.
Sounds real scary.
If you're sticking, big bucks off the ground, like you've really honed your craft. But I'm not there yet. Haven't made that happen. So I'm still like, for me, it's like using climbing sticks, and not because I sell them. It's just that's what I found to be the most efficient and less cumbersome. And for like going in blind in an area, because I like you guys, what I love doing is. I love traveling to new places, sight unseen, and going in and trying to track down a mature deer.
That's cool, man.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we're going to get into in that area, so I want something that I know can get me up any tree. And there's not a tree in the woods I can't get up in with a set of climbing sticks.
Yeah.
Unless it's just way too big, and then I'm just going to get behind it on the ground.
Yeah.
And then it's like the saddle versus tree stands. Like, I love hunting out of saddle. For how I do it, with shooting a stick bow, like I have felt compromised sometimes being that close to the tree and having to face the tree most of the time because there's not a lot of saddle platforms out at the moment that you can really turn around in very well and stand on like you would a lock-on stand. There's just difference in length there, but there's a lot of advantages to all this stuff, and it's all getting pretty close on weight. You know what I mean? and to be honest with you, like my kit, like right now when I go into the woods, just my climbing system is, 10 pounds or, slightly under in certain, situations, depending on what I'm carrying with me. But I'm not going any further than I did when I was carrying 40 pounds of a climbing stand.
Yeah.
Like, because the point was I wanted to get to where I wanted to get regardless of what I had on my back. You know what I mean? And like the grit and putting your feet to the ground and burning boot rubber is what's going to kill you more deer anyway. It's time in the woods, unless you just get lucky and get something on the first day, which never happens to me.
Dude, you ain't lying. Like I killed last year. I sat in a tree for 2 hours in Illinois and killed this big old 8-point. And like I was like, this is the best thing that I've ever done. I stayed up to like 1 a.m. in the hotel room eating cookies and like surfing Instagram. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. It's always like day 5 or 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's just. But most of the time, it takes the time. That's the key to being successful, in my opinion. No matter the species, is the guy that has the most time is normally going to be the most productive year in, year out.
Dude, we tell our listeners, we try to tell them all the time, I mean, even for us, like we get to spend a lot more time than most people do in the woods, and so, but you watch this, you watch TV, you watch YouTube, whatever it is, and you see these guys killing deer, that are hunting public land or whatever. And it's like, it's just don't get down on yourself because you're not doing that, because I can promise you most of these guys doing it out there are spending more time than you are on the land.
And a ton more man hours too.
Yeah.
You got 6 guys scouting for you or whatever. And, that's kudos to that. And if you can find a good hunting buddy to share information with, it's definitely worth it, But
it's exponential, man.
And you're talking about how time, equals success in that. And that's like such a great testament, and maybe a good way to kind of wrap it up with the idea that, the fanciest sticks in the world or the coolest, newest saddle or the best bow isn't going to kill you stuff. But if you can afford stuff like that and you can get to know it really well, then when you can do that second nature, or not have to like get to the tree stand and be like, well, I don't know if my six can do this or whatever, and you just get a system that works for you. And it's kind of, I don't mean to use this in a negative term, but like it's mindless, where it's just inert in what you do.
It's like breathing.
Yeah, then the whole time you can worry about killing deer, and you just know that your gear works for you, And I think that's what's real cool about, like your sticks being lightweight and having Versa button. It's just like, man, it's simple and it works and it goes up a tree, and let's kill deer.
KC's favorite thing about your sticks is there are no exposed nuts.
That's right. What a great line, dude.
Yeah, I've been walking around showing my nuts my whole life.
So modest. Your sticks are so modest.
Yeah, it's very modest. They're very PG-13. I mean, like people make all these advancements in broadheads and arrows and bows and blah blah blah, but there's still so many animals that have hit the dirt with stone points and guys, running around in loincloths, way more than we'll ever catch up with. You know what I mean? So like it can be done. And really what it comes down to is spending more time what's between your ears and perfecting that system more than, and I'm not trying to cut myself short on selling stuff. Like I have to run a business and keep some, employees paid, things like that. But, you'll be a lot more successful if you could save money and spend more time in the woods and, spend more time scouting, blah, blah, blah.
Well, and you're not, I've talked to you a few times, man. And I know that's not just something you're saying on a podcast. Like you do have that integrity, man, of like, you're kind of like, man, this is something I want to do to help people. It's not, whether I sell the sticks or not, I'm still going to hunt, and I'm still going to try to hunt with the best gear I can, and so I can appreciate that kind of easygoing salesmanship, I guess you'd say, or whatever it is, for lack of a better phrase, but just that integrity in what you're doing and what you're saying, and that consistency as well, man. So, but man, we appreciate you coming on. It's been awesome. We'll probably have to do this again sometime if we can think of a few more things. I mean, did a pretty
I think we got
job.
some deer talk to do in the future. I think that's our next thing. You know, I want to hear about that mountain stuff, but we'll have to have more space on our SD card whenever we do that.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. Well, we talked about trying to link up sometime, maybe in Arkansas or somewhere.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
We should do it at camp. That'd be fun, man.
Yeah, dude, that does sound cool. Hey, if somebody wants to check out the stuff that y'all have at Timber Ninja, where should we send them?
Our website's www.timberninjaoutdoors.com, and same thing on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And if anybody has any questions about any of this stuff, like even if it's something that we currently don't sell or have on the market, like I do have a fairly good background in, a lot of these things, so I'm happy to help anybody, man. So just reach out to us.
I saw there was a tree stand kind of floating around out there a little bit. I'll be interested to see that.
Yeah, we have a carbon fiber tree stand coming out relatively soon.
Sweet.
We have a saddle platform, I mean, we're a mobile hunting products company. We're going to have everything in that market space. And,
cool.
And we do give back a portion of our proceeds back to conservation because we want to keep this thing that we love. We want it for our kids too. And it's a passion business for us, man. It's not really a profit thing.
Same here.
If it was a profit thing, I wouldn't have started it.
Dude, if I was all about profits, I'd be working in Dallas right now. I guarantee you.
Exactly.
But I'd be miserable probably too.
Yeah.
So I was in Dallas today. What's that?
I started an OnlyFans account.
There you go.
Yeah.
We got a buddy who has a Patreon. We pick at him about it all the time. Yeah. It's like,
I thought you were modest with your no exposed bolts and stuff. But
when it comes to money.
That's right.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on, dude. And we'll have to do this again, but talk the deer stuff a little more.
That'd be awesome, man. I have a lot of fun doing that.
Cool, man. Well, you and I also were making a joke earlier when he started talking about the rock climbing stuff. I have talked to you about this. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but like a lot of times when we're getting like the tactic on like where some guy, one of our friends is setting up or something, like where he's going to be. It's like, he's like, man, what it does is it's got three ridge fingers that come down, one comes from the northwest, the other one comes from the southeast. And the last one comes from like kind of an east-west, east-south, and I'm like, by that point, I am like glazed over.
Looking like a Krispy Kreme.
I have no clue what's going on. I can't do it, dude. I don't understand. Like, I used to, like, when I listen to other podcasts, or I used to, I don't really do it anymore, but when I listen to other podcasts, and guys would get on there and be like, now just picture this. You got a north wind, and this thing going down, the creek's going east. I'm like, dude, I can't follow. I cannot. And so, like, I kind of had that trouble with the rock climbing, tree climbing analogy.
Jason did say, you can also go watch this on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's like, yes.
I appreciate that.
You should do that.
Yeah, and that's the way I would learn that for sure. Mm-hmm. So I guess my point here is if you struggled to visualize some of the things that we were talking about today, definitely, go back, listen if you need to, make a list of the things that you want to look up if you haven't already done that, and then go check them out on YouTube or Google or whatever, and you can figure out pretty quick what these things are. The forums are a good place to get some even more iffy info.
Rage.
get rage. I wouldn't go asking too many questions on a forum or on a Facebook group page necessarily, but there is a Facebook group page that we created. It's the Element DIY Hunting Group. You can go check that out, search it out, and ask permission to join that group. KC and I will grant you permission if you don't look like a creep in your profile picture. And then you can get in there and ask questions, and there's no ragers in that group yet. So
let us know if there are.
We'll kick them out.
We'd love to hit the red button.
I can't promise that there won't be in the future, but as of right now, you can ask questions and be an idiot, and nobody will call you that. So
that's right.
It's all good. So go join that group. What else we got? We got a out-of-state hunting group as well. So if you're like into hunting out of state, or you want to get some information on out-of-state stuff, that's a new group that's got a lot less members in it, but it's growing. There's a couple of groups that you can join, along with Secret Heirloom Tomatoes, if you're into that, which I am.
For our friend Dan, he's the moderator over there, I think. Yep.
Yeah, he is. He does a lot of moderating. I've got about 71 plants growing right now. I probably have more than that, actually. and I am pretty excited
It's
about them.
addicting. You like stop at this other nursery, you're like, oh, I don't have that right there. It's only $2.
You're like, this one's called Sunrise Bumblebee, and this one's called Orange Honeybee.
Perfect.
I'm not sure if they're different, but I'm going to get them.
Perfect. Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, looking forward to tomato season, and you know what comes after tomato season is hunting season. It's going to be a good time. We're so far from it right now.
I know.
But I had a guy on the phone tell me, he's like, man, it ain't far away. And that's when you know someone is an optimist because it's kind of far away right now.
It's the exact opposite.
It's as far as you can get, but it still ain't far because, 6 months ain't real long, but whatever.
That's pretty good, man. Well, I'll take it. I'll take it, man. We still got a while. I think you and I got a lot of barbecuing to do, a lot of burgers to cook, some pig spaghettis, and a lot of tomatoes to pick and eat with salt and pepper. So I'm pretty excited about those things, I guess. Live in the season that you're in, you know what I mean? You got to live in when it's fishing season. That's why we try not to be too one-dimensional because, man, there's some fun things to do out there, man.
3 2 1-dimensional.
Yeah. So, like I said, live in the season, and remember, this is your element.
Living it.
The new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook Wild Game Recipes for the Grill, Smoker, Campfire, and Camp Stove is out on April 24th and is available for pre-order now. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Pre-order your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com.